I'm Wolf Blitzer. You're in the Situation Room.
This is CNN Breaking News.
The breaking news this hour, significant new twists in the investigation into Russian meddling in the U.S. election. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that special counsel Robert Mueller has impaneled a grand jury in the case. And now Reuters is reporting that grand jury subpoenas have been issued in connection with a controversial meeting between a Russian lawyer and Donald Trump Jr., Jared Kushner, and Paul Manafort. Also breaking. CNN has learned of more major developments. Sources familiar with the special counsel probe say investigators are looking at potential financial ties between President Trump and his associates with Russia. The president has said that's a red line Mueller should not cross. CNN has also learned that investigators turned up intercepted communications of suspected Russian operatives apparently trying to coordinate with former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Sources say the Russians talked about information they believed would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. And the Washington Post is reporting that transcripts of a phone call between President Trump and Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto show Mr. Trump suggested Mexico would not have to pay for the border wall that was central to his campaign. The president implied the cost could be worked out, and he pressed Peña Nieto to stop criticizing the wall. We're covering all of that, much more this hour with our guests, including Congressman Eric Swalwell of the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees. And our correspondents and specialists are also standing by. I want to bring in Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California. He's a key member of both the Judiciary and Intelligence Committees. Congressman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf. Good evening.
All right, let's begin with the Wall Street Journal, a bombshell that the special counsel Robert Mueller has impaneled a grand jury in this Russia probe. Does that suggest to you that his investigation is now seriously intensifying?
Well, this is what progress looks like in a criminal probe. So it's encouraging for us on the House Intelligence Committee to see that Bob Mueller and his team continue to make progress, because that's all we want, is for them to get to the bottom of this as soon as possible. We'll do the same on the House Intelligence Committee.
Reuters is now reporting, Congressman, that a grand jury has already issued subpoenas in connection to the 2016 meeting between Donald Trump Jr., other campaign officials, with Russian lawyers over at Trump Tower in New York. What's your reaction?
I'm glad they have, if that's the case, because, Wolf, when you read that email chain, that showed a willingness and eagerness to work with the Russians to use dirt that they claimed that they had on Hillary Clinton to win an election. So I would hope, just as a former prosecutor, that is something that they are looking at intensely and running down.
As you know, President Trump has warned Robert Mueller, the special counsel, against looking into his private businesses. And now CNN can confirm that the special counsel's investigation is, in fact, focusing in on potential financial ties between Donald Trump and his associates, ties to Russia. Do you worry that the president will try to remove Robert Mueller after hearing about these revelations?
Well, Wolf, the president does not set the parameters of what they are looking for. The Constitution does. There's a doctrine called plain view, which means essentially if the cops go into your house lawfully to look for drugs and they see a gun, they're not supposed to just look the other way. They're allowed to seize that and make that a part of their investigation. But I do worry that this president, every step along the way, has tried to obstruct either the House's investigation or the criminal probe into the ties with Russia. So I am glad, though, that the Senate, it looks like, is trying to put guardrails in place in case the president tries to get rid of Bob Mueller, essentially sending the message that you can get rid of him on the criminal probe, but we will make it so that he can get put back in place. And so I think that's all we want. It's just Bob Mueller and his team to make progress, and then we and the House can report back as well.
Yeah, you're not the only one worried. There are a lot of Democrats and Republicans who are worried about that possibility as well. In fact, there are two separate bipartisan bills right now in the Senate which are designed to protect Mueller from being fired. Is there, as far as you know, a similar effort in the House?
Well, we're concerned as well, Wolf, but we believe right now that the best thing that can happen is that Bob Mueller proceeds. His team is able to chase every piece of evidence, and then, if the evidence is there, report back to us. If it's not, report back to us. So, we'll be back in session in September. But I do believe that the president's intimating that he will get rid of Mueller or trying to undermine this investigation goes to his intent. People who have nothing to worry about don't behave in the way that this president continues to behave. And I think that tells us a lot about what was going on with the president, his team, and Russia.
Because you're on the Judiciary and the Intelligence Committees. Have your committees also taken a similar focus in on potential financial crimes?
Well, Wolf, we are broadly, I can say, we're looking at whether any U.S. persons worked with Russia. We want to understand the degree that the personal, financial, and political relationships that existed between Donald Trump, his family, and his team with Russia, whether that was just a bunch of coincidences or was it a convergence of Russia's interference campaign.
CNN has learned, Congressman, that potential leads about Trump associates are also being referred to the special counsel, even if they have nothing to do with Russia. Investigators hope that that will encourage subjects to cooperate. What do you make of that strategy?
Well, again, Wolf, I believe that, the goal here is to understand what Russia did in the 2016 election, whether anyone on the president's team, because of their relationship with Russia, was working with the Russian interference campaign. And as I said, the law does allow that if you are lawfully looking for, pieces of evidence with respect to the Russia investigation, and you come across, other evidence that would be incriminating, that you don't have to look the other way. And so, I don't believe that there's any evidence that Bob Mueller is doing anything other than, trying to understand what these relationships were, whether they amounted to crimes, and then getting back to us as soon as possible. And a grand jury gets us one step closer to that.
CNN has learned, Congressman, that Donald Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, initially came under some scrutiny after U.S. intelligence agencies collected communications between suspected Russian operatives discussing their efforts to work with Manafort to coordinate information to hurt Hillary Clinton during the campaign. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it doesn't surprise me that Paul Manafort was in that June 9th meeting back in 2016. He's also somebody who had worked with pro-Russian forces in Ukrainian politics. And so he is somebody that we would like to hear from as well. And I imagine if you're Bob Mueller conducting your criminal probe, he's also a person that you want to understand just what was his relationship with the Russians at the time that they were interfering and trying to help Donald Trump.
Congressman, I want you to stand by. There's yet more breaking news that's unfolding. We'll take a quick break, resume all of this right after the break. Let me bring back Congressman Eric Swalwell. Congressman, you've seen the highlights from these phone calls between President Trump and the leaders of Mexico and Australia. What stood out to you?
Well, Wolf, I don't think anyone is surprised to hear that the president had enjoyed the call with President Putin more than anyone else he talked to, or particularly with our ally, the Australians. I mean, that is concerning that he views it that way. But Wolf, let me just say, when I think about what's going on in North Korea right now, which is one of the greatest threats facing the United States and the world, we need a president who has friends. And when you're stitching together a coalition to address a threat like North Korea, you start with your traditional allies, like the Australians, like Mexico, like our friends in NATO. And the president seems to continue to alienate them. And this transcript just provides further color as to how he is doing that.
Clearly, this was a major leak of classified information, the transcripts of these two phone conversations. Here's the question, Congressman. If foreign leaders can't trust the U.S. government to keep their conversations with the president confidential, does that hurt America's ability down the road to conduct diplomacy, global policy, especially when it comes to what you point out, extremely dangerous and sensitive issues like North Korea?
Yeah, I don't like that, Wolf. I don't like that, we're reading about it in a transcript because somebody on the president's own team put that forward. I don't know what the motivation could be. Perhaps people are concerned about the president's hurtful policies and his reckless way of governing. But, the transcript, if it's true, I am worried about the way this president is conducting foreign policy with our friends. And then to throw in the face of one of our friends that he had a better conversation with an adversary who had just hacked our election, that's concerning. That's taken us in a different direction, and that I don't think any of us want to be a part of.
Congressman Eric Swalwell, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Wolf.